The air in Clara's office felt heavier as the hours ticked by. Helen's mind churned, plotting her next move. She couldn't afford a misstep. Patricia was cunning and relentless. "We need leverage," Helen said, breaking the silence. "Something that will hit Patricia where it hurts." Clara leaned forward. "The evidence on this drive implicates her in fraud across multiple accounts. If we expose her, she's done. But the risk to James remains." Helen's jaw tightened. "Patricia knows that's my weak spot. She's banking on me protecting James." James looked away, guilt etched into his face. "You shouldn't have to clean up my mess, Helen." "I don't care about cleaning up your mess, James," Helen said sharply. "What I care about is not letting that woman ruin my life." Clara cleared her throat. "There's another option. We leak part of the evidence, just enough to rattle her, and see how she reacts." Helen considered this. It was risky, but it might force Patricia to make a mistake. "Do it," she said finally. "But keep my name out of it." Clara nodded and began working on encrypting the files for anonymous distribution. Helen's phone buzzed as Clara worked. She tensed, expecting another taunt from Patricia, but it was from an unknown number. "Meet me at the abandoned building on Adeniran Street. Midnight. Come along." Helen stared at the message, her blood running cold. James read over her shoulder. "No way. It's a trap." "Of course, it's a trap," Helen said. "But it's also an opportunity. If Patricia wants to meet, she must be desperate." James grabbed her arm. "Helen, you can't seriously be considering this." She yanked her arm free. "Do you have a better idea? Because sitting around waiting for Patricia to strike again isn't working for me." Clara looked up from her screen, her expression troubled. "If you go, you need a backup plan. She could be luring you out to neutralize you, or worse." "I know," Helen said, her voice firm. "But I'm tired of playing defense." By the time Helen arrived at the decrepit building on Adeniran Street, the moon was high, casting eerie shadows across the peeling walls. She gripped the pepper spray in her pocket tightly, her heart pounding in her chest. The door creaked open, and she stepped inside, her eyes adjusting to the dim light. Patricia's voice echoed from the far corner. "You actually came. I'm impressed." Helen spotted Patricia leaning against a broken table, her arms crossed and her signature smirk in place. "You're bold," Helen said, keeping her voice steady. "Or stupid. Threatening me didn't work, so now you're trying intimidation." Patricia chuckled, the sound cold and hollow. "You think you're clever, don't you? But I've been playing this game longer than you can imagine." Helen didn't respond. She let Patricia talk, trying to read her, trying to find a crack in her armor. "I know you got the drive," Patricia said, her tone sharp. "But it won't save you. If you try to use it, I'll drag you and James down with me." Helen squared her shoulders. "You don't scare me, Patricia. You're desperate, and it shows." Patricia's smirk wavered, just for a second. "I'm giving you one last chance, Helen. Walk away now, and I'll forget this ever happened." Helen laughed bitterly. "You must really think I'm an idiot." Patricia stepped closer, her eyes narrowing. "No, Helen. I think you're in over your head." Before Helen could respond, a figure emerged from the shadows behind Patricia. Helen's breath caught as she recognized him. It was someone she never thought she'd see again. Someone who could change everything. Her ex-fiancé, Alex. Helen's world tilted, her mind struggling to process the implications. What was Alex doing here? And why was he with Patricia? Helen's heart skipped a beat as she locked eyes with Alex. He looked different, hardened, colder. The man she had once been in love with was gone, replaced by someone she didn't recognize. Patricia noticed her confusion and smirked. "Surprised, aren't you? I thought you'd figured it out by now. But clearly, there's more to the story than you know." Helen's voice trembled, but she fought to keep it steady. "What are you doing here, Alex?" Why are you working with her? Alex crossed his arms, his gaze avoiding hers. I'm not working with her. I'm just here for the same reason you are. To protect what's mine. Helen's stomach twisted. Protect what's yours, she repeated, her voice low with disbelief. You mean, you're part of all of this? The lies. The manipulation. The secret life. Alex met her gaze for the first time, his eyes cold and distant. I did what I had to do. What's done is done. The words hung in the air like a heavy fog, suffocating Helen's hope for any explanation or redemption. It was clear now. Alex had been playing her all along, just like Patricia had. You think you can control everything, don't you? Helen's voice shook with frustration. You don't get to walk away from this, Alex. You don't get to hide behind your lies and your secrets anymore. Patricia, sensing Helen's growing anger, stepped forward, her smile widening. The truth is, Helen, you're too late. The game is over for you. She glanced at Alex, who nodded in agreement. Helen took a step back, her mind racing. She had to think fast, had to outmaneuver them before they closed in on her. Her eyes darted to the windows, too high to jump out of, too far to escape through. The only way out was to confront them head-on. Why now? Helen asked, forcing herself to remain calm despite the chaos swirling inside her. Why bring me here? Patricia's eyes gleamed with malice. Because, Helen, we both know you've got the upper hand. But the truth is, you can't expose me, not without taking down everyone else with you. You think you're the only one with secrets. A chill ran down Helen's spine. There were more secrets, things she hadn't uncovered yet. What do you mean? Alex finally spoke, his voice tight. What Patricia means is that she's not the only one with skeletons in her closet. You think I was just going to let her destroy everything we worked for? I have my own interest to protect. The pieces started to fall into place. The drive. The threats. Everything Helen had been running from had been part of a much bigger plan than she could have imagined. It wasn't just Patricia who had been manipulating James and her, it was Alex too. He'd been playing her, using her to secure his own position. I should have known, Helen said, shaking her head in disbelief. This whole time, you've been using me. Alex's expression was unreadable. I did what I had to do, Helen. Don't you get it? This is bigger than you and me. Helen's blood boiled. Bigger than me. You think this is bigger than my life? My future? You used me, Alex, and I'm done. She reached for her phone, her fingers flying over the screen as she texted Clara. Get out. Now. I'm going to need backup. Patricia noticed her movements and smirked again. You think you can just call for help and walk out of here? It doesn't work like that, Helen. For a moment, the room was silent, tension thick and palpable. Helen knew she was cornered, but there was a fire inside her now, a force she hadn't felt before. She wasn't about to back down. I'm not leaving without getting what I came for, Helen said, her voice hardening. Suddenly, there was a loud noise from the hallway, the door slamming open. Helen's heart jumped, and she whipped her head toward the sound. Clara appeared in the doorway, with James right behind her, both armed with determination. Step away from her, Patricia, Clara said, her voice low and dangerous. James, although hesitant, stood beside her, his presence a silent show of support. Patricia's face darkened. You brought them here, Helen. How cute. But you've just sealed your fate. Helen could feel the weight of the moment. She knew it wasn't over yet, not by a long shot. But with Clara and James now on her side, they might just have a chance to end this, to finally bring the truth to light. You don't scare me, Patricia, Helen said, her voice shaking with a mix of fear and defiance. Not anymore. Patricia's gaze flicked to Alex, who gave her a subtle nod. Then, Patricia turned to Helen with a smirk that chilled her to the bone. You really think this is the end, Helen? You don't know what you're getting yourself into. Helen's heart raced, but she stood firm, ready to face whatever came next. She had no choice now. She'd come this far, and she wasn't going to let Patricia, Alex, or anyone else ruin her life. The battle was far from over. But Helen was no longer afraid of the darkness that had once consumed her. It was time to take control of her future, no matter the cost. The tension in the room escalated. Clara and James flanked Helen, but the threat Patricia and Alex posed was still very real. Patricia's eyes flickered between the three of them, calculating her next move. "You think you can just waltz in here and take me down?" Patricia's voice was sharp, almost mocking. "You don't understand the game, Helen. This isn't about right or wrong, it's about power." Alex, who had remained silent for the past few moments, spoke up. His voice was soft but laden with an ominous edge. "It's too late to back out now. You've seen too much, Helen. You're in this whether you like it or not." Helen felt a knot tighten in her stomach. This was worse than she thought. They were right. She had stumbled into something far more dangerous than just betrayal. This wasn't just about Patricia and Alex. They were part of a much larger operation, and her involvement was no longer a choice. "You really think you can intimidate me, Alex?" Helen retorted, her voice steadied despite the fear gnawing at her insides. "You've already taken everything from me, but you're not taking my future. Not without a fight." The silence that followed was thick with anticipation. Patricia stepped forward, her eyes narrowing. "A fight? Against me?" she scoffed. "You can't win this one, Helen. No one can. The moment you walked into my web, you sealed your fate." James stepped closer to Helen, his hand brushing against hers in a subtle gesture of support. "I'm not going to let her get away with this," he said quietly, but the resolve in his voice was clear. Clara, who had been silently observing the tension, finally spoke up. "I've got the evidence, Patricia. The files are ready to go, and I'm not afraid to expose you." Patricia's face contorted in anger. "You think a few documents will stop me? I bury you all." Helen's heart pounded as the words hung in the air. The threat was clear. Patricia was dangerous, and she would do anything to protect her secrets. But something inside Helen stirred, a sense of defiance rising to the surface. "We have a choice, Helen," Clara said, her eyes narrowing as she focused on Patricia. "We can take her down now or wait for her to make a mistake." Helen's grip on her phone tightened. "We take her down now." Without another word, Clara moved swiftly, heading toward the files she had secured earlier. Helen's mind raced as she weighed her options. She knew the risk was high, but the idea of walking away without confronting Patricia was unbearable. She couldn't let her destroy everything Helen had fought for, her future, her reputation, and the life she had planned with James. Patricia was losing her composure. The smile had disappeared, replaced by a cold fury. "You think you can outsmart me? You're all playing right into my hands." But before Patricia could make another move, the door to the building creaked open again. Helen's heart skipped a beat as a new figure stepped inside. This time, it wasn't just anyone, it was a man she recognized instantly. It was her lawyer, Mr. Thompson. He had been advising her on the legal matters surrounding her engagement to James, and Helen had contacted him earlier as a backup plan in case things went south. She hadn't expected him to arrive so soon, but it was a relief to see him now. "Clara, get the files ready. James, stay close to Helen," Mr. Thompson instructed in a calm, authoritative tone. He was a tall man with a composed demeanor, and his presence was like a shield against the rising tension in the room. Helen's pulse raced as she realized just how critical this moment was. They were all on edge, but she had to act quickly before Patricia or Alex made their move. The stakes were too high. Patricia's face twisted in disbelief. "You've brought in a lawyer. How quaint. But you're still out of your league." Helen wasn't going to wait for Patricia to strike. "We're not leaving until you pay for what you've done," she said, her voice filled with newfound determination. Clara's fingers flew over her phone as she sent the encrypted files to the media. The moment Patricia realized what was happening, her eyes flashed with rage. "No. You can't," Patricia began, but it was too late. The documents were already out there. James's eyes met Helen's, and for the first time in days, he smiled. It wasn't the same smile from their past, filled with warmth and trust, but one tinged with the weight of everything they had been through. He squeezed her hand, his voice low. "You did it." Helen nodded, her heart still racing. "We did it. But we're not done yet." Patricia's face contorted as she realized the gravity of what had just happened. She had underestimated them all, and now, her empire of lies was crumbling. "You think this is over?" Patricia hissed, her eyes wide with desperation. "You have no idea what you've just unleashed." Helen's voice was calm but firm. "We've already won. You're done." As Patricia lunged forward, her anger blinding her judgment, Helen braced herself for the final confrontation. The game had changed. Now, the truth would be laid bare for everyone to see, and nothing, no threat, no manipulation, could stop it. Helen was ready to face whatever came next, knowing that she had taken control of her destiny. No matter the cost. The room fell into a heavy silence after Patricia's outburst. Her face was a mixture of disbelief and fury, her breath coming in ragged bursts. Helen could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on her, but she stood tall, resolute. Patricia's hands were trembling as she reached for her phone, her fingers trying to regain control over the situation that was slipping from her grasp. "This isn't over," she muttered under her breath, but it was clear the walls were closing in on her. Helen, still holding her phone, felt the pulse of the information she had just sent ripple through her. She had done it. The documents, the evidence of Patricia's lies and deceit, were now out there for the world to see. And no matter how much Patricia fought, there was no turning back. Alex, who had been silent for the longest time, suddenly spoke up. His voice was cold, like steel. "You think you've won, Helen? You think this is over?" His eyes flashed with malice. "The people you're dealing with aren't easily beaten. You've just made yourself a target." Helen's stomach twisted. She could feel the weight of Alex's words, but there was something in his eyes, something broken. The man she had once loved had disappeared, replaced by someone she barely recognized. She had no more time for his threats or his empty words. "I'm not afraid of you anymore, Alex," Helen replied, her voice unwavering. "You chose your side, and I chose mine." The room seemed to close in around them, the air thick with the tension of unspoken promises and threats. But Helen refused to flinch. She had come too far to be intimidated now. James, standing beside her, took a deep breath. "Helen's right. We're done playing your game, Alex. All your secrets are out in the open now. It's over." Patricia, still clutching her phone, glared at them all. Her voice was low, venomous. "You think I just let this go? You think your little victory will mean anything when everything comes crashing down? You've made enemies. You've exposed me, but you have no idea the kind of people you've just crossed." Helen felt a cold shiver run down her spine. The warning was clear, Patricia was not backing down. This was far from over, and they were all in danger now. But Helen refused to back down. "We've been living in fear long enough," Helen said, her voice steady, though she could feel her heart pounding. "You might have your power, but you're not the only one who has something to lose." For a moment, Patricia's eyes flickered with something, fear, perhaps. It lasted only a split second before she regained her composure. "You don't know what you've started, Helen. You have no idea what's coming for you now." James's jaw clenched. "Whatever happens, we're ready. You won't win this." Helen turned to Mr. Thompson, her lawyer, whose calm demeanor had provided her with a sense of security through the chaos. "What's our next move?" He nodded, his voice firm. "We've already exposed her. Now, we focus on protecting you. But we need to move fast. She'll try everything to silence you, and the people behind her won't hesitate either." Helen's mind raced. She had been caught in this whirlwind for too long, but she had finally found the courage to break free. She wasn't going to let Patricia destroy her. Not now. Not ever. Before anyone could respond, the sound of footsteps echoed down the hallway. It was faint at first, but it grew louder, closer. Helen's breath caught in her throat. Who else was coming? She didn't know if she was ready for more threats or if this was the moment that would finally bring it all to an end. The door creaked open, and another figure stepped into the room. This one was unfamiliar, but his presence was commanding. He was tall, with sharp features and a calculating gaze that swept over the room, assessing each person. "Is everything under control?" the man asked, his voice smooth and authoritative. Helen's heart skipped a beat. There was something about this man that made her feel uneasy, like he was a part of the world Patricia and Alex had been hiding from her. "Who are you?" Helen demanded, her voice tight with suspicion. The man glanced at her, his eyes narrowing. "I'm someone who's been watching this situation unfold," he said coolly. "And I think it's time we had a little chat." Patricia's face darkened as she looked at the man. "I didn't expect you to show up so soon, Victor. But it doesn't matter. They've already made their move." Victor ignored her, instead focusing on Helen. "I think we need to talk about the next steps," he said. "This situation has become complicated. You might think you've won, but there's a bigger picture you're not seeing." Helen exchanged a glance with Clara, who had stayed quiet but clearly on edge. James took a step forward, his protective instincts kicking in. "What do you want from us?" Victor smiled, but it was a smile devoid of warmth. "I'm here to offer you a choice. A choice that will determine the rest of your life." Helen's mind spun as the weight of his words hit her. A choice. What did that mean? For the first time, she wasn't sure what the right move was. She had spent so long trying to expose Patricia's lies, but now there was someone even more dangerous in the picture. She had to stay focused, but she couldn't help but wonder what this man's true intentions were. The game had changed again, and Helen had no idea where it would take her. But one thing was clear, she couldn't stop now. Not when she was so close to uncovering everything. The only question was, how much more of the truth was she willing to risk?